Billionaire bought Heiress to get revenge, but she taught him how to love again. The contract had 17 pages, but only one clause that mattered: I was selling myself to a stranger for $80 million. Martin Anderson sat across from me, 37 years old and carved from ice and anger, offering to save my family from ruin. The price? 12 months as his wife. A marriage built on revenge for sins I didn't commit. I should have said no. Instead, I signed my name and became Mrs. Anderson, the woman who would either destroy him or save him. Welcome back to CJ Stories, where we bring you emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul. If you're just joining us for the first time, you're welcome to this wonderful big family. We're so glad to have you here. Please make sure to watch till the end, and if today's story moves you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and share this video with your family and loved ones. Now, let's dive into today's story. The contract sat between them like a weapon. Harriet Palmer, 34 years old, dressed in a black Chanel suit she'd owned since better days, stared at the man across the mahogany desk. Martin Anderson. Billionaire. Tech mogul. The man who now owned every cent of her family's debt. And apparently, the man who wanted to own her. Let me make sure I understand, she said, her voice steady despite the hurricane in her chest. You'll forgive the $80 million debt my father left behind. You'll let my mother keep the house. In exchange, what? Become your wife? Martin leaned back in his leather chair, 37 years old and cold as January. His blue eyes held no warmth. No mercy. For 1 year, he said. You live with me. You appear with me publicly as my wife. You play the role convincingly. That's insane. That's the offer. He slid the contract closer with one finger. Sign it, or your mother loses everything by Friday. The estate, the cars, her entire life. She'll be on the street by the weekend. Harriet's hands clenched in her lap. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan office, April rain streaked down like tears. She'd flown in from Connecticut this morning, still wearing the same numb expression she'd carried since burying her father 2 months ago. Now this. Why? She asked. Why me? You're a billionaire. You could have anyone. Something flickered across Martin's face. Something dark and old. Let's just say your family owes me more than money, he said. Sign the contract, Harriet. Or walk away and live with the consequences. She looked down at the papers. Her hands trembled. This man was a stranger. This proposal was medieval. Everything about this screamed run. But the image of her mother, 64 years old, already broken by grief, losing the only home she'd ever known. Harriet reached for the pen. 3 weeks earlier, March 2024. The Palmer estate is bankrupt, Malcolm Cross said, dropping the file on Martin's desk. Richard Palmer died 2 months ago. Left behind a widow and 1 daughter. And $80 million in debt, most of it owed to shell companies we can trace back to some very unpleasant people. Martin Anderson picked up the file, his expression unchanged. At 37, he'd perfected the art of showing nothing. His corner office in Lower Manhattan overlooked a city he'd conquered. Outside, March wind rattled the windows. Inside, his heart beat faster. Palmer. Richard Palmer, Martin said quietly. Of Palmer Industries. The same, Malcolm confirmed. The company collapsed last year. Bad investments, worse decisions. He had a stroke in 2022, never fully recovered. Tried to save the business, only drove it deeper into the ground. Martin opened the file. A photo stared back at him, an older man, silver-haired, distinguished. The same face that had smiled at Martin 5 years ago before stabbing him in the back. 2019, Martin had been 32, his tech company thriving but not yet massive. He'd approached Palmer Industries about a partnership. Richard Palmer had listened to his pitch, smiled warmly, shook his hand. Then stolen Martin's proprietary code, filed patents under Palmer Industries' name, and attempted a hostile acquisition of Martin's company. It had almost worked. Martin had fought back, barely. Spent everything he had on lawyers. Lost 2 years of his life to litigation. Won eventually, but only after Richard Palmer had moved on to his next victim, leaving Martin's reputation damaged and his trust obliterated. The betrayal had changed him. Hardened him. Made him the ruthless billionaire he was today. Now, 5 years later, karma had come around. Who inherits the debt? Martin asked. The estate. Which means Vivian Palmer, the widow. But, Malcolm hesitated. There's a daughter. Harriet Palmer. She's been living abroad for years, Paris, working as an art curator. Came home when her father got sick in 2022. She's 34, single, currently managing what's left of the estate. Martin stared at the file, a plan forming. Richard Palmer was dead. Beyond Martin's reach. But his legacy remained. His family. His name. And Martin had learned long ago that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was control. Buy the debt, Martin said. All of it. Malcolm's eyes widened. That's $80 million for. I don't care. Buy it. Then arrange a meeting with Harriet Palmer. Martin's jaw tightened. I want to make her an offer. April 2024. The Connecticut estate looked smaller every day. Harriet Palmer stood in what used to be her father's study, now empty except for dust and memories. At 34, she'd thought she'd left this life behind. She'd spent 7 years in Paris, building a career in the art world, creating a life that was hers alone. Then her father had his stroke. She'd come home to help. Temporary, she'd told herself. Just until he recovered. But he never did. And now he was gone, and the empire he'd built was rubble, and her mother hadn't left her bedroom in 3 days. Miss Palmer? Harriet turned. The estate attorney stood in the doorway, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The final accounting is complete, he said. I'm very sorry. She already knew. 80 million in debt. The house mortgaged 3 times over. Her father's life insurance barely enough to cover the funeral. How long do we have? Harriet asked. The primary creditor is calling the debt due immediately. Without payment, foreclosure begins within 30 days. 30 days. Her mother would lose everything. Who holds the debt? The attorney shifted uncomfortably. That's complicated. It was recently acquired by a private entity. Anderson Holdings. The name meant nothing to Harriet. They've requested a meeting, the attorney continued. With you. Tomorrow, in Manhattan. Me? Why not my mother? They specifically asked for you, Miss Palmer. Something cold slithered down Harriet's spine. Fine, she said. Set it up. She had no choice. If there was even a chance of negotiating, of buying time, of saving her mother from complete ruin, she'd take it. The meeting, April 15, 2024. Harriet stepped off the elevator into a world of steel and glass. Anderson Holdings occupied the top 3 floors of a midtown skyscraper. Everything was sharp angles and expensive silence. The receptionist directed her to the executive floor without making eye contact. This was a different universe from the dusty estate in Connecticut. She dressed carefully, the Chanel suit from better days, her natural hair pulled back into a professional bun, minimal makeup. At 34, she'd learned how to armor herself for battle. But when the assistant opened the door to the corner office, nothing could have prepared her. Martin Anderson stood by the windows, backlit by gray April light. Tall, maybe 6'2". Dark hair with silver threading the temples. Sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't so cold. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit like it was casual Friday. He looked at her, and his blue eyes held nothing. Miss Palmer, he said. Thank you for coming. His voice was deep, controlled. Everything about him screamed power. Harriet lifted her chin. You bought my family's debt. I did. Why? Business. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please. Sit. She didn't want to, but standing felt like weakness. She sat, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Years of etiquette training kicking in automatically. Martin moved to his desk, fluid and deliberate. He didn't sit. Instead, he opened a file. Harriet Palmer, he read. Born 1990. Educated at Yale, degree in art history. Moved to Paris in 2017, worked at Musée d'Orsay until 2022. Returned to the United States when your father had his first stroke. Currently unemployed, living at the family estate, managing your father's remains. Heat flushed her cheeks. He'd researched her. Thoroughly. What do you want? She asked. Martin closed the file. Finally, he sat, folding his hands on the desk. Your father destroyed lives, he said quietly. Did you know that? Harriet blinked. What? Richard Palmer. Brilliant businessman. Ruthless opportunist. He built Palmer Industries by stealing patents, crushing competitors, and leaving wreckage in his wake. Martin's voice never rose, but something deadly lurked underneath. 5 years ago, he tried to destroy my company. Stole proprietary technology. Filed fraudulent patents. Nearly succeeded in a hostile takeover. The air left Harriet's lungs. I fought back, Martin continued. Won eventually. But it cost me years. Millions. And something I'll never get back, the belief that there's honor in business. Harriet's mind spun. She'd been in Paris in 2019. She'd known her father's business had faced legal troubles, but he'd always framed himself as the victim. Had he lied? I didn't know, she whispered. I'm aware. You were in Paris. Living your life. While your father destroyed mine. Then why am I here? If you want revenge on a dead man. I don't want revenge on a dead man, Martin interrupted. I want compensation. Justice. And you're going to give it to me. He slid a document across the desk. Harriet stared at it. What is this? A contract. I'll forgive the entire $80 million debt. I'll ensure your mother keeps the estate, the staff, her lifestyle. Everything. It sounded too good to be true. It was. In exchange, Martin continued, you'll marry me. 1 year. You'll live with me, appear publicly as my wife, and play the role convincingly. At the end of 12 months, we divorce quietly. You walk away free. Your mother keeps everything. Harriet's heart stopped. You're insane, she breathed. I'm serious. You want to buy me? I want to hire you, Martin corrected. Think of it as a role. An acting job. You're quite good at performing, aren't you? Years of society parties, charity galas, playing the perfect daughter? The insult landed like a slap. Why? Harriet demanded. Why would you possibly want this? Martin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something wounded and vicious. Because watching Richard Palmer's daughter pretend to love the man he tried to destroy will be the sweetest revenge I can imagine. The truth hit her like cold water. This wasn't about marriage. This was about humiliation. Control. Making her father's legacy, making her into a trophy. Proof of Martin's total victory. No, Harriet said, standing. Absolutely not. Then your mother loses everything. There has to be another way. There isn't. Martin stood too, towering over her. I own the debt, Miss Palmer. All of it. I can call it due tomorrow. Foreclosure by the end of the month. Your mother will have nothing. You're a monster, Harriet whispered. I'm a businessman who was betrayed by your family. This is justice. This is cruelty. Sign the contract, Martin said, pushing it closer. Or walk away. Choose. Harriet stared at him. This man, this cold, ruthless stranger, wanted to marry her to punish a dead man. Wanted to parade her around like a prize. Wanted to control her life for a year just to prove he could. Everything in her screamed run. But her mother's face flashed through her mind. 64 years old. Widow. Broken by grief. Losing everything she'd ever known. I need time to think, Harriet said, her voice shaking. You have 5 minutes, Martin replied. The debt is due Friday. 3 days. Harriet's vision blurred. Her hands trembled. She'd come to this meeting hoping for mercy, for negotiation, for humanity. Instead, she'd found a man carved from ice and vengeance. If I sign, she said slowly, what exactly does this marriage entail? We'll live together. Appear together publicly. You'll wear my ring, use my name, convince the world we're in love. In private. Martin hesitated for the first time. Separate bedrooms. This is a business arrangement. For 1 year. 12 months from the wedding date. Then we divorce. You're free. Your mother's debts are forgiven permanently. I'll even provide a settlement, enough for you to start over wherever you want. It was insane. Medieval. Wrong. It was also her mother's only chance. Harriet looked at Martin Anderson, 37 years old, billionaire, beautiful and terrifying, and felt something crack inside her chest. Where would we live? She asked quietly. I have an estate in Sedona, Arizona. Private. Secure. Beautiful, if you care about that sort of thing. Sedona. Red rocks and silence. Far from everything she knew. And if I refuse? Your mother is homeless by Monday. Harriet closed her eyes. She thought of Paris. Of freedom. Of the life she'd built with her own hands, far from her family's name and expectations. She thought of her mother, who'd loved her father despite his flaws, who'd given Harriet everything. She thought of her father, who'd apparently been a monster she'd never truly known. When she opened her eyes, Martin was watching her with those cold blue eyes. Waiting. A predator who'd already won. 1 year, Harriet said. Then I'm free. Completely free. You have my word. Your word means nothing to me. Something like pain flashed across Martin's face, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. It's all I'm offering, he said. Harriet reached for the pen on his desk. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold it. Where do I sign? Martin pulled out a chair for her, a gentleman's gesture that felt like mockery. He flipped to the final page, pointing to a line. She signed her name. Harriet Marie Palmer. The last time she'd write it. Martin took the contract, adding his own signature with steady hands. When he looked up, something shifted in his expression. Satisfaction. Victory. We'll marry in 3 days, he said. Quiet ceremony, just witnesses. Then we leave for Sedona immediately. 3 days. Harriet stood on shaking legs. I need to tell my mother. Tell her whatever you want. Except the truth. What am I supposed to say? That you fell in love. Martin's smile was sharp as broken glass. That I'm the man of your dreams. That you're choosing happiness after so much grief. Mothers like that sort of story. The cruelty of it stole her breath. Harriet turned toward the door, desperate to escape. Harriet. She froze at the sound of her first name in his voice. Welcome to the family business, Martin said softly. Your father taught me everything I know about making deals. The words followed her all the way to the elevator. 3 days later, April 18, 2024. The courthouse wedding took 11 minutes. Harriet wore a simple cream dress she'd bought that morning. Martin wore the same cold expression he'd worn in his office. The witnesses were strangers, his attorney Malcolm and a courthouse employee who looked bored. Do you, Harriet Marie Palmer, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? She looked at Martin. His blue eyes revealed nothing. I do, she whispered. Do you, Martin James Anderson, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. No hesitation. No emotion. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Just like that, she belonged to him. Martin slid a ring onto her finger, a flawless diamond that probably cost more than most people made in a year. It felt like a shackle. You may kiss the bride, the officiant said. Martin leaned in, and for one horrible second, Harriet thought he might actually. He pressed a cold, brief kiss to her cheek. Mrs. Anderson, he murmured against her skin. Then he stepped back, already turning to Malcolm to discuss logistics. Harriet stood there, a wife in name only, and wondered what she'd just done. April 20th, 2024. The private jet landed in Sedona at sunset. Harriet pressed her forehead against the window, watching red rocks turn crimson in the dying light. She'd barely spoken since the wedding. Martin hadn't seemed to notice, or care. A car waited on the tarmac. Martin helped her in with the same cold courtesy he'd shown all day. She wanted to scream at him to stop pretending to be a gentleman when they both knew he wasn't. They drove through Sedona in silence. The town was beautiful, art galleries, spiritual retreats, stunning vistas. Under different circumstances, Harriet might have loved it. Now it felt like a prison with a view. The car turned onto a private road, winding up into the hills. Finally, they stopped in front of massive gates. Welcome home, Martin said flatly. The gates opened. The estate sprawled across the hillside like something from a dream. Modern architecture blending with the natural landscape. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the sunset. Infinity pool seeming to spill into the canyon below. It was the most beautiful place Harriet had ever seen. She hated it. A housekeeper greeted them at the door, an older woman with kind eyes who introduced herself as Rosa. I've prepared the master suite for Mr. Anderson, Rosa said, and the guest suite for you, Mrs. Anderson. Separate bedrooms. As promised. Thank you, Rosa, Martin said. We'll have dinner in an hour. Rosa disappeared, leaving them alone in the cavernous entryway. Your room is upstairs, East Wing, Martin said, already walking away. I'll have your things brought up. Dinner at 8. Don't be late. He vanished down a hallway, leaving Harriet standing in a stranger's house, wearing a stranger's ring, carrying a stranger's name. Mrs. Anderson. She'd sold herself to save her mother. And she had no idea how she'd survive the next 12 months. Harriet's first night in Martin's house. A year of pretending to love a man who bought her for revenge. But in the morning, she'll discover something about Martin Anderson that changes everything, a secret he's been hiding that makes her question who the real villain is. 2 weeks later, early May 2024. Harriet found Martin on the terrace at 3 a.m., holding a photo and crying. He didn't know she was there. In the moonlight, the ruthless billionaire looked shattered. His shoulders shook. His face twisted with a grief so raw it stole her breath. Then he sensed her presence and the mask slammed back. But she'd seen the crack in his armor. And everything changed. The confession. Go back to bed, Harriet, Martin said, his voice destroyed. She should have listened. Should have walked away from this man who'd bought her for revenge. Instead, she stepped into his study. I heard you, she said quietly. You heard nothing. He turned away, hiding the photo. Martin. This is a contract. You're here because I paid for you. That's all. The words should have hurt. 2 weeks ago, they would have. But Harriet had spent 14 days in this silent house, watching this man work himself to exhaustion, avoiding her like she carried plague. She'd seen him stare at the red rocks with such loneliness it made her chest ache. He wasn't a monster. He was something far more complicated. Who's in the photo? She asked. His hands trembled. None of your business. We're married. We're contracted. Don't confuse the two. Harriet should have left then. Instead, she told him the truth. My father died in February, she said. I was holding his hand. At the end, he squeezed twice. I think it meant I love you. I hated him by then for the lies and debts. But I still loved him. Grief doesn't make sense. Silence stretched like wire. Then, so quietly, today would have been her birthday. Harriet's heart stopped. Her? My daughter. Martin's voice cracked completely. Lily. She would have been 7. She died when she was 2. Leukemia. Oh God. The year she died was 2019, Martin continued, still not looking at her. Same year your father tried to destroy my company. I was drowning in grief, couldn't fight back properly. Your father took advantage of that, kicked me when I was already destroyed. Nearly took the only thing I had left. Understanding crashed over Harriet. So you're destroying me the same way, she whispered. Yes. Finally, he turned. His face was devastation. I brought you here to make the Palmer name suffer. To prove I won. But I'm telling you this so you understand, it's not about you. It's about making sure your family knows what it feels like to lose. His eyes were red, swollen, broken. And Harriet saw the truth he couldn't say, I don't know how to feel anything except pain. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. Martin went rigid. What are you? Shoo. For 3 heartbeats, he remained frozen. Then he shattered. His arms crushed her against his chest. He buried his face in her shoulder and broke completely, 5 years of grief pouring out in wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. Harriet held him through all of it. When the storm finally passed, Martin didn't pull away. He stayed there, breathing against her neck, holding her like she was the only solid thing in his world. I'm sorry, he whispered. I brought you here to hurt you. That makes me a monster. That makes you human, Harriet said softly. A human in pain who made a terrible choice. He pulled back to look at her, really seeing her for the first time. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not. She managed a small smile. But I'm giving it anyway. Something shifted in his expression. Softened. And Harriet realized with terrifying clarity, she was in danger. Not from his cruelty. From the possibility that she could actually fall for this broken man. The next day, May 4th, 2024. We should be seen together, Harriet said over breakfast. Build the illusion. There's a gallery opening in town. Martin looked startled. You want me to come with you? We're supposed to be newlyweds, remember? He studied her face like he was searching for mockery. Found none. I'm free afternoon, he said carefully. Her smile reached her eyes. It's a date. It's not a pick me up at 1, Martin. Pretend you know how to romance someone. Despite himself, his lips quirked. Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Anderson. The gallery. Sedona sparkled in the afternoon sun. Martin held the gallery door open, his hand finding the small of Harriet's back automatically. The contact sent electricity through both of them. Harriet moved through the space like she belonged there, her whole face lighting up at the bold abstracts on display. Look at this one, she breathed. You can almost feel the heat of the rocks. Martin looked at the painting. Saw red paint. He looked at Harriet and saw wonder. You miss it, he said. The art world. Every day. She glanced at him. But present company isn't terrible. Was she flirting with him? Present company is your husband who blackmailed you, Martin reminded her. People are complicated. You're learning that about me. I'm learning that about you. What have you learned? She stepped closer. That you're not the villain you pretend to be. That grief made you cruel, but cruelty isn't your nature. That underneath all that ice, you're capable of incredible love. Martin's throat tightened. You barely know me. I know you cried in my arms last night. I know you said her name like a prayer. Her fingers brushed his. I know you're not a monster, Martin. You're just a man who's been in pain so long he forgot what healing feels like. How did she see him so clearly? After the gallery, they walked through town. Harriet dragged him into shops, exclaiming over crystals and jewelry. Martin followed, carrying her purchases, feeling like he'd stepped into someone else's life. A life where he wasn't broken. They ended up on a bench with ice cream, overlooking Oak Creek. Tell me about Paris, Martin said. Harriet's face lit up. She told him about museums and markets, the tiny apartment with windows overlooking a courtyard, the way light fell on the Seine. Martin listened, watching her hands move as she talked, the passion in her voice. Why did you really come home? He asked. The light dimmed. Ma needed me after Dad's stroke. Family is everything, even when they disappoint you. You don't abandon people you love. Martin thought of how he'd pushed everyone away after Lily died. I abandoned everyone, he said quietly. Buried myself in work and anger. Grief, Harriet corrected. You buried yourself in grief. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Her hand found his. Martin stared at their joined hands. This woman was offering him something he didn't deserve. Understanding. Forgiveness. Maybe even healing. I don't know how to let someone in, he admitted. You already are. You told me about Lily. You came to a gallery. You're eating ice cream. She squeezed his hand. You're already feeling, Martin. Terrifying feelings. The best ones usually are. That night, dinner on the terrace turned into hours of conversation under the stars. They talked about everything: books, music, childhood, dreams. The wine flowed. The stars wheeled overhead. And somewhere between the second and third glass, Martin realized he was laughing. When had he last done that? You're dangerous, he said, watching her. Me? You're the billionaire with revenge schemes. Reformed revenge schemes. You're making me reconsider my villainous ways. Harriet leaned back, face tilted to the stars. You're better when you're not trying to be scary. I'm not scary? Oh, you're terrifying. She looked at him. But not for the reasons you think. Explain. You're terrifying because underneath all that ice, you're capable of the kind of love that could make someone forget this started as a contract. The kind that could make someone feel things they absolutely shouldn't feel. Martin's heart stopped. He stood, catching her wrist gently as she tried to retreat. Don't run, he said. We should establish boundaries. This is getting confused. We're holding hands and laughing, and I'm starting to forget why I'm really here. Why are you here? Martin asked, pulling her closer. Because you bought me. To hurt my father's memory. Is that the only reason? Martin. Because I'm starting to forget this was about revenge, he breathed. Starting to think about what happens when the year ends and you leave and I'm. He stopped, shocked at what he'd almost admitted. Asterisk alone again. Empty again, asterisk. And you're what? Harriet whispered. He kissed her instead of answering. 1 second they were staring at each other, the next his mouth was on hers and it was everything. Harriet froze for a heartbeat. Then she kissed him back. Her hand slid into his hair. His arms wrapped around her waist. The kiss deepened, turned desperate. 5 years of loneliness. 2 weeks of tension. The terrifying realization that this fake marriage was becoming real. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, the world had shifted. That wasn't in the contract, Harriet whispered. No. We shouldn't. Definitely not. This is a terrible idea. Absolutely terrible. Neither moved apart. What are we doing? She asked. Martin touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I have no idea. We agreed. Business arrangement. 1 year and done. I know. So we should stop. Before this gets more complicated. We should, Martin agreed. But he kissed her again anyway. And this time, when she melted against him, he knew they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was real. But someone from Martin's past just arrived in Sedona, someone who knows exactly why he married Harriet. And when she discovers what started as revenge has become something real, she'll do whatever it takes to destroy them both. 3 weeks later, late May 2024. The woman standing in Martin's entryway was beautiful, blonde, and looking at Harriet like she was an insect. So this is the replacement, she said, her voice dripping poison. Martin had gone pale. Victoria. What are you doing here? Meeting your new wife, darling. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. Though I'm curious, does she know why you really married her? Or are you still playing games? Harriet's blood turned to ice. Because the way Martin wouldn't meet her eyes told her everything. Whatever they'd built over the past 3 weeks, the conversations, the laughter, the kiss that had changed everything, was about to come crashing down. 3 weeks of heaven. After that first kiss, everything had shifted. Martin started joining Harriet for breakfast. They'd explore Sedona together, hiking red rock trails, visiting art galleries, having lunch at cafes overlooking the canyon. At night, they'd cook dinner together, badly, drink wine on the terrace, talk until the stars faded. They hadn't kissed again. Not really. Just lingering touches, his hand on her back, her fingers brushing his, moments that stretched like taffy, heavy with wanting. It was torture. Beautiful torture. Tell me about Lily, Harriet said one evening in mid-May, her head on his shoulder as they watched the sunset. Martin had tensed, then relaxed. She had my eyes. Her mother's smile. She loved strawberries and hated naps. She'd paint on everything, walls, furniture, herself. We had to hide the markers. His voice held pain, but also warmth. Memory instead of just grief. She sounds perfect, Harriet whispered. She was. Martin's arm tightened around her. You would have loved her. She would have loved you, you're both artists. The casual intimacy of it, asterisk you would have asterisk, as if Harriet belonged in that past, in that family, made her chest ache. I'm falling for you, she'd almost said. But fear held her tongue. By late May, they'd settled into a rhythm that felt like marriage. Real marriage. Martin worked from home more, stealing moments with her between calls. Harriet had started painting again, converting one of the guest rooms into a studio. Martin would find her there, covered in paint, lost in creation. Beautiful, he'd say, looking at her canvas. But he'd be looking at her. They hadn't discussed what came next. Hadn't talked about the contract expiring in 9 months. Hadn't acknowledged that this wasn't supposed to be real. Because it was real. At least, Harriet thought it was. Until Victoria arrived. The confrontation. Victoria is my ex-wife, Martin said, his voice tight. Lily's mother. Harriet's stomach dropped. This was the woman who'd left him. Who'd blamed him for their daughter's death. Victoria looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, designer dress, perfect makeup, ice blonde hair. She was maybe 42, beautiful in a sharp, polished way. And she was staring at Harriet with open contempt. How touching, Victoria said. The great Martin Anderson, married again. To a Palmer, no less. Her laugh was cruel. Oh, this is rich. You need to leave, Martin said. I don't think so. Not until your little wife understands what she's really doing here. Victoria. Did he tell you about the plan? Victoria asked Harriet directly. Did he mention that he married you specifically because your father destroyed him? That this whole thing is elaborate revenge? Harriet's heart stopped. I know about the contract. The contract. How delightfully businesslike. Victoria circled them like a shark. But did he tell you about the other part? The part where he planned to parade you around, humiliate you publicly, then divorce you spectacularly? Make sure the Palmer name was dragged through every tabloid in the country. The floor tilted. Harriet looked at Martin. Is that true? His face had gone ashen. It's not, it was. Answer the question, Harriet said, her voice shaking. Did you plan to humiliate me publicly? Martin's silence was answer enough. Oh, this is perfect, Victoria laughed. You actually fell for him, didn't you? Poor thing. Martin doesn't know how to love anymore. I made sure of that when I left. Get out, Martin snarled. Why? I'm enjoying this. Watching you try to play human again. Pretending you're capable of caring about someone besides yourself. I said get out. The explosion made both women jump. Victoria's smile turned venomous. Still have that temper. That's what killed Lily, you know. Your temper, your obsession with work, your complete inability to put anyone before your precious company. Don't. Martin's voice broke. Don't you dare use her name. You have no right? I have every right. I'm her mother. You were just the father who was never there. The words hit Martin like bullets. He actually stumbled back. Harriet moved without thinking, stepping between them. Leave, she told Victoria. Now. Victoria's eyebrows rose. How sweet. The purchased wife defending her buyer. Does he pay you extra for loyalty? I mean it. Get out of this house. Or what? You'll call security? This is Martin's house, sweetheart. You're just renting. The truth of it stung. But Harriet held her ground. You lost the right to hurt him when you walked away. You don't get to come back 5 years later and rip open those wounds just because you're miserable. Victoria's eyes flashed. You know nothing about what I've suffered. I know you blame a grieving father for something neither of you could control. I know you abandoned him when he needed you most. I know you're here now because you heard he moved on and you can't stand it. Harriet's voice strengthened. So yes, leave. Because whatever games you're playing, whatever poison you're trying to spread, we're not interested. The we're hung in the air. Victoria looked between them, something shifting in her expression. Oh my God. You love her. Martin said nothing. You actually love her, Victoria breathed. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be cold revenge, and you fell for your own mark. Victoria. This is perfect. This is poetic. Her laugh was bitter. The man who destroyed me with his inability to love falls for the daughter of his enemy. I hope it destroys you, Martin. I hope she breaks you the way you broke me. She swept toward the door, then paused. By the way, your business partner called me. Malcolm. He's worried about you. Said you've been distracted, making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. He thinks she's compromising you. Victoria's smile was poison. He might be right. Love makes you weak, Martin. You should remember that. The door slammed behind her. Silence filled the house like smoke. Harriet turned to Martin slowly. You plan to humiliate me publicly. He wouldn't meet her eyes. At first. Yes. At first. Before I knew you. Before. Before what? Before you decided the revenge fuck would be better if I actually cared about you first. Martin flinched. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Harriet's voice broke. Because 3 weeks ago, you kissed me. You held me. You told me about Lily. You made me believe. She stopped, horror washing over her. Oh God. Was any of it real? All of it was real. I don't believe you. Harriet. No. She backed away. You brought me here for revenge. You were planning to destroy me, destroy my family name even more than it already was. And tears burned her eyes. I fell for it. I fell for you. I actually thought. Her voice shattered completely. Martin reached for her. Please. Let me explain. Explain what? That you're exactly the monster I thought you were in the beginning? That I was stupid enough to believe you changed? I have changed. You changed me. Stop lying. The words exploded from her. Just stop. I can't do this anymore. She ran. Up the stairs, down the hallway, into her room, not their room, never their room, because this was never real, and slammed the door. Martin's footsteps followed. Harriet, please. She locked the door, sliding down it, burying her face in her knees. I'm sorry, Martin said through the wood. God, I'm so sorry. Yes, I planned to humiliate you publicly. I wanted to destroy the Palmer name completely. I was drowning in grief and anger and I wanted someone to hurt the way I hurt. Harriet pressed her hands over her ears. But his voice continued, broken and desperate. Then I met you. And you weren't what I expected. You were kind and strong and you held me while I cried and you made me laugh for the first time in 5 years. You made me remember what it felt like to be human. To want something besides revenge. Go away, Harriet sobbed. I love you. The world stopped. I know I have no right, Martin continued. I know I'm exactly the monster you think I am. But somewhere between that first dinner and today, I fell completely in love with you. And I was too scared to tell you because I knew, the second you found out the full truth, you'd leave. Silence. So yes, Martin said quietly. I'm a monster who planned to destroy you. But I'm also a man who loves you more than he's loved anyone since Lily. And I don't know which truth matters more. Harriet heard his footsteps retreat. She sat there, shaking, her world in pieces. He loved her. He'd also planned to humiliate her. Both truths existed simultaneously. And she had no idea which one to believe. That night, Harriet didn't come down for dinner. She stayed in her room, staring at the contract she'd retrieved from her things. Her signature. His signature. The clause she'd never noticed before, buried in the legal language. Asterisk, Party A reserves the right to disclose the nature of this arrangement publicly at the termination of the contract. Asterisk. He'd planned it from the beginning. Planned to reveal she'd been bought. Planned to humiliate her family even more than her father already had. The revenge was always part of the deal. But the kiss on the terrace, had that been revenge too? The way he held her while hiking. The stories about Lily. The vulnerable 3 a.m. confession. The laughter and wine and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who understood her. Had any of it been real? Her phone buzzed. Her mother. Darling. How's married life? Harriet's throat closed. It's good, Ma. You sound strange. Is everything all right? No. Nothing was all right. She'd fallen in love with a man who'd bought her for revenge. She'd let herself believe in fairy tales and second chances. She'd been an idiot. Everything's fine, Harriet lied. Just tired. Well, get some rest. And thank Martin again for me, for everything. This house, the security. I don't know what we would have done without him. The knife twisted. Because Martin had kept his promises. Her mother was safe. The estate was secure. All the debts were paid. He'd fulfilled his end of the contract perfectly. The fact that he'd made Harriet fall in love with him in the process was just, what? Collateral damage? A bonus to the revenge plan? I love you, Ma, Harriet whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. After hanging up, Harriet stared at her wedding ring. The diamond caught the light, throwing rainbows across the ceiling. She'd worn it for 5 weeks. Started thinking of it as real instead of costume jewelry. Started thinking of him as real. She should leave. Pack her bags, call a lawyer, get the marriage annulled. Victoria had revealed the truth, the humiliating, ugly truth. Harriet owed Martin nothing. Except, I love you. He'd said it through the door, his voice broken. And some foolish, desperate part of her wanted to believe him. Later that night, Martin sat in his study, staring at the photo of Lily. I fucked up, baby girl, he whispered. I fell in love and I didn't tell her the whole truth and now she hates me. What do I do? Lily smiled back from the photo, forever 2 years old, forever his. His phone rang. Malcolm. Victoria called me, his attorney said without preamble. Told me she went to see you. Said things are getting complicated with the Palmer girl. Her name is Harriet. Right. Harriet. Listen, I'm concerned. You've been making decisions lately that don't align with the original plan. The original plan is over, Martin interrupted. What? I'm not destroying her publicly. I'm not humiliating her. The revenge scheme is done. Silence on the other end. Martin, Malcolm said carefully. I understand you've developed feelings. But the contract can be modified. I want that disclosure clause removed. I want a new contract drawn up, one where she gets half of everything. The houses, the money, all of it. Are you insane? That's not. I love her, Malcolm. I'm in love with my wife. So either help me fix this, or you're fired. More silence. You're really in love with her, Malcolm said slowly. Completely. Does she know the full extent of what you planned? The media campaign, the tabloid leaks, all of it? Martin's stomach turned. Victoria told her about the public humiliation. But not the rest. There's more. Malcolm sounded horrified. Martin, what else did you plan? He'd planned everything. Tabloid exposés about the Palmer family's corruption. Strategic leaks about how Harriet had sold herself to save her mother. Photos of them together with captions suggesting she was a gold digger. A carefully orchestrated media campaign to destroy what remained of the Palmer reputation. All of it designed to maximize pain. All of it now making him sick to his stomach. I need to fix this, Martin said. Tell me how to fix this. I don't know if you can, Malcolm said honestly. You lied to her. Used her. Planned to destroy her. That's not something you come back from easily. I have to try. Then you need to tell her everything. Every single part of the plan. Show her the contracts, the media strategies, all of it. Full transparency. Then hope she's a more forgiving person than you deserve. Martin closed his eyes. If I tell her everything, she'll leave. If you don't tell her everything, Victoria will. Or someone else will. Better she hears it from you. He was right. Martin looked at Lily's photo again. Your mother said love makes you weak. Was she right? But he knew the answer. Love didn't make you weak. It made you accountable. It made you face the monster you'd become and beg for the chance to be better. The next morning, May 28, 2024, Harriet found an envelope under her door. Inside, a USB drive and a note in Martin's handwriting. Asterisk, this contains everything. Every plan I made, every contract I drafted, every horrible thing I intended to do to you and your family. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to see the whole truth before you decide what comes next. Whatever you choose, I'll honor it. The house is yours. The money is yours. Your mother's security is permanent, regardless of whether you stay or go. You owe me nothing. M***. Harriet's hands shook as she opened her laptop and plugged in the drive. What she found made her physically ill. Folders labeled media strategy, tabloid contacts, photo leaks, character assassination. Documents outlining exactly how he'd planned to destroy her. Articles pre-written about the Palmer heiress who sold herself. Photos of them together, annotated with cruel captions. A timeline spanning the full year of their marriage, each month with planned revelations designed to maximize humiliation. It was systematic. Thorough. Cruel. It was the work of a man consumed by vengeance. But the file dates told another story. Every document was dated April. Before they'd met. Nothing had been updated since. The media contacts hadn't been activated. The articles hadn't been sent. The photos hadn't been leaked. The plan existed, fully formed and ready to execute. But Martin had never pulled the trigger. At the bottom of the drive, one final folder, new plan, May. Harriet opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a new contract. One that gave her half of everything. One that removed every clause about disclosure. One that included a provision for her to stay in Sedona, keep the studio, receive an income whether they stayed married or not. A contract that gave her everything and asked for nothing. Dated May 26th. 2 days ago. Before Victoria arrived. He'd already been rewriting their deal before the truth came out. Harriet's phone buzzed. A text from Martin. Asterisk, I'm at the Cathedral Rock trailhead. If you want to talk, I'll be here until sunset. If you don't come, I'll understand. I'll have my attorney draw up divorce papers and be out of the house by tomorrow. You won't have to see me again, asterisk. She stared at the message. She should let him go. Should end this nightmare and start over somewhere new. But her treacherous heart kept returning to one truth, he'd stopped. He'd had every weapon ready to destroy her, and he'd put them all down. The question was, had he put them down because he loved her? Or because he'd found a better way to hurt her? Harriet has one choice to make, meet Martin at Cathedral Rock and hear his truth, or walk away forever. But what she doesn't know is that Victoria isn't finished. And the real threat isn't Martin's revenge plan, it's the secret Victoria's been hiding that will shatter everything. May 28, 2024. Martin sat on the red rocks, watching the sun bleed across the Arizona sky. She wasn't coming. He'd been here for 3 hours, and Harriet wasn't coming. He didn't blame her. He'd shown her the monster he'd been, the elaborate revenge he'd planned. Why would she ever trust him again? Then he heard footsteps on the trail behind him. He turned, and there she was, 34 years old, breathtaking in the dying light, her eyes holding a question he didn't know how to answer. "I saw the files," Harriet said. Martin's heart cracked. "I know. Every horrible thing you planned to do to me." "Yes. Why didn't you?" The question hung between them like a prayer. "Because I fell in love with you," Martin said simply. "And I couldn't destroy the person who brought me back to life." Harriet sat beside him on the rocks, careful not to touch him. "When did you change the plan?" she asked. "I don't know exactly. Somewhere between that first dinner and the night you held me while I cried. Somewhere between the gallery and the ice cream and the moment I realized hearing you laugh was better than any revenge could ever be." The sun dropped lower, painting everything crimson. "The new contract," Harriet said. "Half of everything. No disclosure clause. You wrote that before Victoria came. I was going to give it to you next week. On our 2-month anniversary." Martin's laugh was bitter. "Stupid, romantic gesture from a man who doesn't deserve romance. Why half? Why not just end the arrangement?" "Because I'm selfish." He finally looked at her. "I was hoping if I gave you security, gave you everything, maybe you'd choose to stay anyway. Not because of a contract. Because you wanted to." Harriet's breath caught. "That's manipulative." "I know. That's still trying to buy me." "I know that too." Martin turned back to the sunset. "I don't know how to do this, Harriet. I don't know how to love someone without calculating angles and protecting myself. Victoria was right, I'm broken. I've been broken since Lily died." "We're all broken," Harriet said quietly. "The question is whether you want to heal or whether you want to stay in pain forever." "I want to heal." His voice cracked. "God, I want to heal. But I don't know if I can." Silence fell between them. "Tell me about the worst part of the plan," Harriet said. "The thing you're most ashamed of." Martin flinched. "Why?" "Because I need to know how far you were willing to go." He deserved this. Deserved to face every ugly truth. "There was going to be a charity gala," he said. 6 months into our marriage. I was going to give a speech about second chances and redemption. Then I was going to show a video, photos of us together, looking happy. And at the end, I was going to reveal it was all fake. That I'd bought you. That the Palmer family was so corrupt, their own daughter sold herself to save them." Harriet made a small, wounded sound. "I was going to humiliate you in front of 300 people," Martin continued, hating himself. "Film it. Leak it. Make sure it went viral. Make sure everyone knew the Palmer name was worthless. That's..." Harriet's voice shook. "That's evil, Martin. I know. That would have destroyed me. I know." He turned to her, tears streaming down his face. "I was so consumed by grief and rage that I turned into the exact thing your father was. I became the monster. And I'm so sorry, Harriet. I'm so fucking sorry." She was crying too now. "How do I trust you? How do I know you won't change your mind again?" "You can't," Martin said honestly. "I can't prove I've changed. I can show you the new contract, give you everything I own, spend every day for the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you, but I can't prove it. Trust is a choice. And I know I've given you every reason not to choose it." The sun touched the horizon, setting the world on fire. "I love you," Martin whispered. "I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see beauty in everything. I love that you held a broken man and didn't run. I love that you're sitting here right now when you should hate me. I love you, and I don't deserve you, and I'm begging you to give me a chance to be better." Harriet stood abruptly. "I need time. Take all the time you need. I'm going to stay with my friend Simone in Phoenix for a few days. I need space to think." Martin's heart shattered, but he nodded. "Whatever you need." She started down the trail, then stopped. "Martin?" "Yeah?" "I saw the date on the new contract. May 26th. "Yeah. That was the day after we cooked dinner together. The day we danced in the kitchen to that old song. The day you told me I made you want to believe in happiness again." Martin remembered. God, he remembered every second. "That's when you knew," Harriet said. "That's when you knew the revenge plan was over." "That's when I knew I'd rather die than hurt you," Martin confirmed. She nodded once, then disappeared down the trail. And Martin sat alone on Cathedral Rock, watching the sun set, wondering if he'd just lost the only good thing in his life. 3 days later, May 31st, 2024. Simone's apartment was chaos, art everywhere, cats, plants overtaking every surface. "So let me get this straight," Simone said, pouring wine. "Billionaire bought you for revenge, you fell for each other, his psycho ex revealed his evil plan, but he'd already abandoned said plan because he loves you? Basically. Girl." Simone shook her head. "Your life is a movie." Harriet curled into the couch, exhausted. She'd spent 3 days replaying everything. Every conversation. Every touch. Every moment trying to figure out what was real and what was manipulation. "Do you think he really changed?" she asked. "Do you?" "I don't know. The files were horrifying, Simone. He was going to destroy me systematically. But he stopped. He stopped before I even knew about the plan." "That matters," Simone said. "Does it? Or does it just mean he found a better manipulation tactic, make me fall in love so I'd be devastated when he eventually revealed the truth? Is that what your gut tells you?" Harriet closed her eyes, remembering Martin's face at Cathedral Rock. The tears. The raw honesty. "I'd rather die than hurt you. My gut tells me he's telling the truth," she admitted. "But my gut has been wrong before." Her phone buzzed. Another message from Martin. He'd been sending one a day, never pushing, just present. Day 3, Lily used to hide vegetables in her napkin. "I found a stash of Brussels sprouts in her dresser once. Made her laugh so hard she couldn't breathe. I think about that laugh every day. I think about your laugh too. Hope you're okay." Simple. Honest. Showing her pieces of himself. "He's fighting for you," Simone observed. "Or he's being strategic." "Harriet." Simone grabbed her hand. "I've known you since college. You're the woman who moved to Paris alone, who built a career from nothing, who came home to care for a father who didn't deserve it. You're strong and smart and you don't make stupid choices about men. I married a man who bought me. You saved your mother from ruin. That's not stupid, that's love." Simone squeezed her hand. "So here's the real question. If Martin is telling the truth, if he really has changed, if this is real, do you love him enough to risk being wrong?" The question hit like lightning. "I don't know," Harriet whispered. But that was a lie. She knew. She'd known since the night she found him crying over Lily's photo. Since he'd laughed at the gallery. Since he'd kissed her under the stars and looked at her like she was the answer to questions he'd forgotten how to ask. She loved him. Completely. Stupidly. Terrifyingly. The question wasn't whether she loved him. The question was whether loving him was enough. The house echoed without her. Martin wandered through rooms that felt haunted. Her studio, with half-finished paintings. The kitchen, where they'd danced. The terrace, where they'd kissed. Everywhere he looked, he saw her. "Mr. Anderson?" Rosa stood in the doorway, concern on her face. "You need to eat something." "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten in 2 days." Had it been 2 days? Time had lost meaning. "I ruined everything, Rosa," Martin said. "I had something beautiful and I poisoned it with revenge and lies." "Did you tell her the truth?" "Every ugly piece of it." "Then you've done all you can do." Rosa sat beside him. "The rest is up to her. What if she doesn't come back? Then you learn to live with the consequences of your choices." Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. "You made terrible decisions, Mr. Anderson. Decisions born from grief and pain. Now you're making better ones. That's growth. But growth doesn't erase the past." Martin put his head in his hands. "I don't know how to live without her now. She's only been gone 3 days and I'm falling apart." "That's love," Rosa said. "Real love. The kind that terrifies you because losing it would destroy you. I can't lose her." "Then fight for her. Every single day. Show her you've changed. But also," Rosa paused. "Also accept that she might leave anyway. And if she does, you love her enough to let her go." The truth of it crushed him. He'd brought Harriet here to control her, to use her, to prove his power. Now the most powerful thing he could do was give her the freedom to choose. Even if she chose to leave. June 1st, 2024. Harriet's phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Harriet Palmer?" A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a pediatric oncologist. I treated Martin Anderson's daughter, Lily, before she passed." Harriet sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Why are you calling me?" "Because Victoria Anderson contacted me 3 days ago. She wanted medical records. I refused, but she made threats. I'm worried she's planning something." "What kind of something?" "I don't know. But she was asking about the timeline of Lily's illness. About whether Martin was present during treatments. She said something about, finally making him pay." Ice flooded Harriet's veins. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. But Victoria is, she's not well, Harriet. She never processed her grief properly. She blamed Martin for everything, but the truth is more complicated." Dr. Chen paused. Martin was at every appointment. Every treatment. Every bad night. He slept in hospital chairs for weeks. When Lily died, he was holding her hand. He was devastated. Victoria said he was never there. Victoria has rewritten history to make her pain make sense. But I was there. I saw him. He was a devoted father who lost his child. He didn't deserve what she did to him. Harriet's mind raced. What did she do to him? She told him Lily's death was his fault. Told him if he'd been less focused on work, they would have caught it earlier. That's not true. Lily's leukemia was aggressive. Nothing would have changed the outcome. But Victoria needed someone to blame. So she chose Martin. Oh God. Why are you telling me this? Because Victoria called me again tonight. She's in Sedona. And she said something that scared me. She said, Martin's about to learn what it feels like to lose everything. I thought you should know. The line went dead. Harriet's hands shook as she called Martin. It rang once. Twice. Then Victoria's voice answered. Hello, Harriet. Looking for your husband? He's a bit tied up at the moment. What did you do? What he deserves. What he should have suffered 5 years ago. Victoria's laugh was unhinged. He took my daughter. Now I'm taking everything from him. Starting with you. The call ended. Harriet was already grabbing her keys, running for the door. Behind her, Simone called out, What's happening? I have to get to Sedona. Now. It's midnight. I don't care. The man I love is in danger and I'm not losing him. The man I love. She'd said it out loud. And suddenly, everything was clear. She loved Martin. Broken, flawed, reformed Martin. She loved him despite the revenge plan, despite the lies, despite everything. And she was going to fight for him. If it wasn't already too late. Harriet races back to Sedona, but Victoria has a head start. And the revenge she's planned for Martin is far worse than anything he ever did to Harriet. Time is running out, and the only way to save him is for Harriet to risk everything, including her heart. Midnight, June 1st, 2024. Harriet drove through the Arizona night like the devil was chasing her. Or maybe she was chasing the devil. Victoria's laugh still echoed in her ears. He's a bit tied up at the moment. Simone sat in the passenger seat, already on the phone with the police. Yes, we think there's a woman at the Anderson estate who might be dangerous. What do you mean you need evidence? She threatened him. Simone looked at Harriet. They won't send anyone without proof of immediate danger. Then we go alone, Harriet said, pressing harder on the gas. The Sedona road stretched endlessly ahead. Phoenix to Sedona was 2 hours normally. Harriet was determined to make it in 90 minutes. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo. Martin, unconscious, slumped in a chair in what looked like his study. Then another text, * you broke our deal, Martin. You were supposed to suffer forever. But you found happiness. That's unacceptable. The asterisk. Oh my God, Harriet whispered. She drugged him. Drive faster, Simone said. Harriet's hands tightened on the wheel. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 3 days ago, she'd walked away from Martin, needing time to think, to process, to decide if she could trust him. Now all that mattered was getting to him before Victoria's twisted revenge destroyed everything. Please be okay, she prayed. * please. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I finally know what I want, *. The speedometer climbed higher. 1:47 a.m., June 2nd, 2024. Harriet's car screeched to a stop outside the gates. They were open, already wrong. Martin always kept them locked. Stay in the car, Harriet told Simone. Absolutely not. Call the police again. Tell them we have visual confirmation of a break-in. Then call Malcolm, Martin's attorney. His number is in my phone. Harriet was already out of the car. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, come in loud. She didn't wait for an answer. The front door stood ajar, spilling light into the darkness. Harriet's heart thundered as she slipped inside. Victoria, she called out. I'm here. Let him go. Silence. Then, from upstairs, how romantic. The bought wife coming to rescue her buyer. Harriet followed the voice to Martin's study. The scene made her blood freeze. Martin was tied to his desk chair, head lolling, clearly sedated. Victoria stood behind him, a glass of whiskey in one hand, something that looked like pills in the other. What did you give him? Harriet demanded. Just a little something to keep him quiet. He's so dramatic when he's conscious. Victoria's eyes were wild, unfocused. She'd been drinking, a lot. Did you know he begged? When I told him I was going to make sure you knew every ugly detail of his revenge plan. He actually begged me not to hurt you. Victoria, this is insane. Insane? Victoria threw the glass. It shattered against the wall. I'm insane? I watched my daughter die while this bastard buried himself in work. I lost everything, my child, my marriage, my life, and he gets to move on? Gets to fall in love again? Gets to be happy? Martin stirred slightly, mumbling something incoherent. He wasn't working, Harriet said, trying to keep her voice calm. I talked to Dr. Chen. She said Martin was at every appointment, every treatment. He was there, Victoria. You blamed him for something that wasn't his fault. Don't tell me what I saw. You saw a man drowning in grief, just like you were. You saw someone to blame because blaming yourself was too painful. Harriet stepped closer. I understand. I blamed my father too, for dying, for the debts, for the lies. Grief makes us cruel. It makes us hurt the people we love. Victoria's hand shook, pills scattering across the floor. You don't understand anything. I understand that you loved Lily. I understand that losing her broke you. But destroying Martin won't bring her back. It won't ease your pain. It'll just create more. He deserves to suffer. He has suffered. Harriet's voice cracked. For 5 years. He suffered every single day. And then he made terrible choices because pain turns people into monsters. But he stopped, Victoria. He chose to heal instead of destroy. Why can't you? Tears streamed down Victoria's face. Because healing means accepting she's gone. And I can't. I can't accept that my baby is dead and I'm still here and the world just keeps spinning like she never existed. Her voice dissolved into sobs. Martin's eyes flickered open, still unfocused. Harriet, he slurred. I'm here, she said. I'm right here. You came back. Of course I came back, you idiot. I love you. The words hung in the air like magic. Victoria's sobs quieted. You love him? After everything he planned to do to you? Yes, Harriet said simply. Because people are more than their worst moments. Because he chose to be better. Because love isn't about perfection, it's about choosing someone despite their flaws and trusting they'll choose you back. She moved to Martin, her hands working at the ropes binding him. Victoria, you can let us go and get help. Real help. Therapy. Treatment. A chance to heal properly. Or you can keep feeding this revenge and destroy yourself completely. Which sounds like something Lily would want for her mother. Victoria stared at her, mascara running, hands trembling. Lily would want you to live, Harriet continued softly. Not just survive. Actually live. Find joy again. Honor her memory by being the mother she loved, not this person you've become. For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. Then she sank to the floor, broken. I don't know how. You start by asking for help. Harriet finished untying Martin, supporting his weight as he slumped against her. And by letting go of the people you're trying to punish. Sirens wailed in the distance. Victoria looked up, defeated. I really loved her. I know, Harriet said. Martin knows too. You both loved her. That was never the question. 4:23 a.m. The paramedics cleared Martin. Victoria had only given him a strong sedative, nothing dangerous long-term. The police took statements. Victoria went quietly, accepting the psychiatric evaluation the officers recommended. Finally, as dawn painted the red rocks gold, Harriet and Martin were alone. He sat on the terrace, still groggy, a blanket around his shoulders. Harriet brought him coffee. You came back, he said again, like he couldn't quite believe it. You thought I wouldn't? I thought you'd leave forever. I thought I destroyed any chance we had. Harriet sat beside him. You almost did. The files you showed me, Martin, they were horrifying. I know. The things you planned to do. I know. He turned to her, his blue eyes clear now, devastated. I can't take back who I was. I can only promise who I'm trying to be. And who's that? A man worthy of you. A man Lily would be proud of. A man who chooses love over revenge, every single time. His hand found hers. But I understand if it's not enough. If you can't trust me. If you want to leave. I told Victoria I love you, Harriet interrupted. Martin's breath caught. What? When you were tied up, drugged, and I was terrified I'd lose you, I told her I love you. And I meant it. Harriet. I've spent 3 days thinking about trust and risk and whether loving you was insane. And you know what I realized? She turned to face him fully. Love is always insane. It's always a risk. My parents had a supposedly perfect courtship and my father still turned out to be corrupt. There are no guarantees, Martin. Not ever. So what are you saying? I'm saying I saw who you were at your worst. I saw the revenge plan, the cruelty, the monster grief made you. And I'm choosing to love you anyway. Not because you're perfect, but because I've also seen you at your best, vulnerable and honest and trying so hard to be better. Tears slid down Martin's face. I don't deserve you. Probably not. Harriet smiled. But you're stuck with me. Because I'm in love with you, Martin Anderson. Completely. Terrifyingly. Real love. Not contract love. Not obligation. Choice. You're choosing me? Every day. For as long as you'll have me. Martin pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. Forever. I want you forever. Forever's a long time. Not long enough. They sat there as the sun rose over Sedona, holding each other, two broken people who'd found healing in the last place they'd expected. In each other. 3 months later, September 2024. The art gallery opening was packed. Harriet Palmer Anderson's first solo exhibition, the sign proclaimed. Harriet stood among her paintings, bold abstracts inspired by Sedona, by grief, by love, by second chances. Critics circulated, collectors made offers, cameras flashed. But all she cared about was the man in the corner, watching her with pride and love. Martin caught her eye and smiled. That smile, the real one, the one he saved just for her, still made her heart skip. He'd kept every promise. The new contract had been signed, she owned half of everything, though she'd insisted on a prenup that protected what was his. They'd gone to couples therapy, working through trust and trauma. He'd introduced her to Lily through stories and photos, no longer crying when he spoke her name, just remembering with love. And Harriet had stayed. Not because of money or obligation. Because she wanted to. "Your work is stunning," a critic said, pulling her attention back. "Thank you. It's been a journey." After the opening, they drove back to the estate, their estate now. Harriet had redecorated, making it feel like home instead of a beautiful prison. "I'm proud of you," Martin said, pulling her onto the terrace where they'd first kissed. "It's just one gallery show. It's you, being brave enough to put your heart into art and share it with the world. That's everything." Harriet leaned against him, looking at the stars. "Do you ever regret it? Giving up the revenge plan?" "Not for a second. Revenge would have felt good for maybe a day. This," he kissed her temple. "This feels good every single day. Even when I'm cranky and covered in paint? Especially then." She turned to face him. "I have something to tell you." His expression shifted. "Good something or bad something?" "Good. I think. I hope." She took a breath. "I talked to Ma today. She wants to come visit. Meet her son-in-law properly, now that we're real." They'd told Vivian the truth months ago, about the contract, the revenge plan, all of it. She'd been shocked, then angry, then ultimately understanding. "Your father made many enemies," she'd said. "I can't blame Martin for being one of them. I can only thank him for choosing love over hate." "I'd love to meet her properly," Martin said. "I promise to be charming." "That's what I'm afraid of." Harriet laughed. "But there's something else." "What?" She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We're going to need to convert one of the guest rooms." Martin's eyes went wide. "You're 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. I wanted to wait until after the opening to tell you." For a moment, he just stared at her, stunned. Then he dropped to his knees, pressing his face against her stomach, and broke down completely. "I'm scared," he admitted. "After Lily." "I know. I'm scared too." Harriet ran her fingers through his hair. "But we're doing this together. And we're going to love this baby so much. Just like you loved Lily. Just like we love each other." "A baby," Martin whispered, wonder in his voice. "Our baby. Our baby." He stood, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. "I love you," he said against her lips. "God, I love you so much. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for this, for everything. Thank you for being worth coming back to." They stood there under the stars, holding each other and the future they were building. A future that started with revenge but transformed into something beautiful. A future built on honesty, healing, and love that was worth every risk. 1 year later, June 2025. The nursery glowed with soft morning light. Martin stood by the window, holding his 3-month-old daughter, Maya Rose Anderson. She had Harriet's dark curls and his blue eyes. She was perfect. Terrifying. Everything. "Your big sister would have loved you," he whispered. "Lily would have been the best big sister. She would have taught you to paint and hide vegetables and laugh until you couldn't breathe." Maya yawned, completely unimpressed. Harriet appeared in the doorway, still in her robe, watching them with a soft smile. "Telling her about Lily again?" "Always. I want her to know she has a sister watching over her." Harriet crossed to them, wrapping her arms around Martin from behind, the three of them forming a perfect circle. "You know what today is?" she asked. "June 2nd. 1 year since you raced back to save me from Victoria. 1 year since I told you I loved you for the first time." Harriet kissed his shoulder. "Best decision I ever made. Marrying a man who bought you for revenge? Choosing to stay with a man brave enough to change." She looked up at him. "You know Victoria sent a letter last week. From the treatment facility. What did it say? That she's sorry. That she's working on healing. That she hopes someday we can all find peace." Harriet paused. She asked if she could see photos of Maya. As Lily's stepmother, she feels connected. Martin tensed, then relaxed. "What do you think?" "I think healing takes many forms. And if sharing our daughter's photos helps Victoria heal, then maybe that's grace. You're too good for this world, Martin said. I learned from you. You chose grace over revenge. Changed everything. Maya made a small noise, and they both laughed. She's hungry, Harriet said. Your daughter has impeccable timing. Our daughter, Martin corrected. Our daughter. As Harriet fed Maya, Martin watched them, his wife, his daughter, his second chance at family, and felt overwhelming gratitude. He'd planned to destroy the Palmer family. Instead, a Palmer had saved him. Had taught him that love was stronger than revenge. That healing was braver than hate. That second chances existed for those courageous enough to change. What are you thinking? Harriet asked. That I'm the luckiest man alive. Even though your wife is sleep-deprived and your daughter screams at 3 a.m.? Especially because of that. He kissed her forehead. This, the chaos and the love and the noise, this is everything I thought I'd lost forever. And you gave it back to me. We gave it to each other, Harriet corrected. That's how love works. We save each other. Later that evening, they had dinner on the terrace, the same terrace where they'd shared their first real kiss, where Martin had confessed his love, where everything had changed. To second chances, Martin said, raising his glass. To choosing love, Harriet added. To our family, they said together. The red rocks glowed in the sunset, ancient and eternal. And in their home filled with laughter and paint and baby toys and love, so much love, two people who'd started as enemies had found something neither planned for. They'd found home. Not in a place, but in each other. Martin Anderson had bought Harriet Palmer for revenge. But Harriet had taught him something far more valuable. How to love again. How to heal. How to be human. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all, against grief, against hate, against the darkness that had consumed him. Love had won. And it would keep winning, every single day, for the rest of their lives. As the stars emerged over Sedona, Harriet leaned against Martin's shoulder, Maya asleep in her arms. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't signed that contract? She asked. Every day. And I'm grateful you did. Because it brought you to me. Even if the path was twisted and painful, it led us here. To happy, Harriet said softly. To forever, Martin agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, a family born from broken pieces, rebuilt with love. The billionaire who'd bought an heiress for revenge. The heiress who'd taught him that healing was possible. And the love that had transformed them both. In Sedona, where the rocks turned crimson at sunset and magic felt possible, two people had found their second chance. And they were never letting go. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next.